Welcome back to another edition of the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke, and I'm joined today by Chris Flower. Chris, how's it going today?
Good. How are you?
Great. Recovered a little bit from Chico. How about yourself?
I'm very well recovered after my Chico experience.
Well, we're going to talk about Chico, and we'll get right to this. Welcome, everybody. Chico Stage Race. We did that. We're going to do Chico. We'll do some corrections and readers' comments. NCNCA Roundup, some World Tour Roundup. The classics are going to begin. Some winners and losers, things that make you go, And then we'll get out of here. So it's, what is it, the 4th of April. Tax time's coming up. So, first of all, you've been riding pretty good. We went to Chico. We did the Masters. And any reflections from there, and I'll get to say this too, kind of a disappointment for the podcast up at Chico, but we'll talk about why a little bit later. But what were some takeaways from you before we dive into all the little issues?
Just kind of
fix that mic.
Oh, what happened? Hold on. Just generally, it's such a fun event. It's hard not to go there and have fun. The big bummer, I think, not from a podcast perspective, but just from a racing perspective, is that the 35 plus field was so small that there was a little bit of kind of controversial joining up with other fields before the stage race actually started. I think there were 10 of us registered for the 35s, and they ended up merging us in with the 45s, which makes sense from a racing perspective. You don't want to go out and do 4 stages across all those different miles with just 10 other guys. It's not much fun.
Exactly. So there was that to begin with, kind of what are we going to do with this? And Jeff Gallen had put it out, last year they didn't have mixed at all. They were all, were all mixed.
Yeah.
So he put that out there as to what we're going to do, and they decided to just race together, score separately, and just see what happened with that. And look, for us, since we're in the 35s, a smaller group, I thought it was a good deal to do, partly because, like you said, it would have been hell to do. So
yes, definitely. So it was fun and enjoyed it. Right.
So you want to talk about some of those races? Let's jump into some of the results that we had for all of those.
Yeah. We both raced the 35s, so we only got to see bits and pieces of the other races.
Right.
I think we watched the finish to the 2s. We watched a little bit of the Pro 1 race and a little bit of the women's Pro 1, 2, 3 race. But, the first race is the Thunderhill circuit up at Thunderhill Raceway in Willows. I enjoyed it. It was a fun race. I kind of just hung out in the back and kind of watched the race unfold, and you guys had a good finish there, you and John.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that, the 35, 45 combined, and maybe we'll put a few little clips in here on our YouTube page as we're discussing it. You can kind of see a few things. Nothing was really happening. Last year they had in the 35s Touchstone or Die Endurance team with Mike Sayers. He had a good team for him, so they really ramped it up. They kept it together,
right? And
they really wanted a sprint finish, and that's actually what we got. And they ramped it up on the last few laps. This one, it's just kind of back and forth, not much going on, and then suddenly you get, about 20 minutes in, Jonathan Baker decides to just try to rip the field apart, and like 3/4 of a lap just goes in there, and there's a decent wind,
right?
And he just throttles it, and it starts stretching out. And I think some people got worked off the back at that point.
They did, yes.
And then a little while after that, you start to have Giles and Sophocles, and you want to talk about those guys, and then they just roll off the front.
Yeah, no, those guys, again, I was near the back when they were launching their attacks, but they just kind of rolled off together, and it didn't really seem like there was a really significant effort to bring them back. And ultimately, they rolled to a 30-second advantage over the field, finished 1-1 or 1-2, however you want to describe it.
Right.
It sounds like, we talked with Giles a little bit after the race, and he had said that, that the Sophocles fella from Oregon, who we've never raced against, was just a beast and just hammering through the corners a little aggressively at times,
right.
But definitely worked in their favor to get that gap and hold everybody off.
Yeah, so he's a guy from Oregon. We didn't know much about him, but he had one teammate, and it turned out that he was just a guy that would just plows it, and Giles is like that too. So those guys go, and we expected, and we talked about this in the podcast, but we expect, and so we won't go to too much of it. We expected it to come down to field sprint because all those 45s would want to bring back Giles. They did not do so, and so then John and I were left to it with one Pete's guy, Nick Theobald, to kind of do some work, and we set it up, and John got he got beat in the field sprint by Jonathan Baker, who we'll talk about a lot on this podcast.
Right.
But he ended up for the 45s getting winning the field sprints essentially for the 35s because Sophocles was up the road. So we took second, and then I held on for third. So
so the 2-man breakaway was a 45-plus rider and a 35-plus rider. So they went 1-1. John Baker went 2 for the 45s. John Novikov went 2 for the 35s, and you went third for the 35s.
Correct, because of the guy off the front. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we had on that one. Let's talk about some of the other fields that day. So you could go back to the last episode because we kind of did a breakdown of this, but we didn't really talk much about the women's race.
Right.
So so just let you look at the results and maybe go back to the last one. If there's any other fields you want to call out there before we just kind of talk about the women, because that was the one we didn't talk about too much on episode 102.
We could just touch on a couple quick items. Men's 3 race, our own Jeff Scott got fourth in that field sprint that he kind of picked a wrong line on, is what he said. In the 2s, Madden Titus from SunPower took the win. Jack Barty from Velobody, second place. Nigel DeSoto from Methods to Winning took third, so good for those guys. We could touch on the Pro 1 race briefly. A lot of action in that race because they do have kind of hot laps where they're sprinting for the sprint jersey, so those opportunities were kind of leveraged into attempts to break away from the field. Ultimately, that came back to a field sprint. Some pretty big sprinters that were left in that. You had Matt Chatt, Anthony Ferretti, Justin Polson, Tyler Williams. Ultimately, Garrett Hankins took the win. He's with Mike Bikes.
Right.
And Kent Ross took second. He's from the New Wildlife, former Jelly Belly team, and Matt Chatt took third in that. So it was a pretty brutal sprint. Looks like Garrett Hankins was carrying some good form, though, from whatever training he's doing up in Portland. Yeah,
it looked really good coming out from there and being able to take that. But it was a lot of bike throwing, and we saw Tyler Williams really take from as he's coming up, veer to the hard left, hard right, getting out. But it was so wide open. I don't think it was. I guess they could have relegated at something, but I think he wasn't taking anybody out. It was just when you look at the film, all of a sudden you see this guy jettison out to the right and coming up. But it was a good field, good race there.
He didn't impede anybody's line and didn't chop anybody's wheel, and probably just saw an opening and went for it.
Right. So we'll talk about some of the superstars that showed up for that race. But let's go to the women real quick because Share 2020 Share team showed up. Is that right?
Show Air.
Show Air.
Yeah.
And they, in the end of things, they really put their stamp on it. But I was surprised at the first stage because it's not a super easy race.
No.
And they didn't get the win that day. It was, I want to say a local because she's been doing a bunch of local races, but she's from the Northwest. And I think when we first saw her coming on, she was a 3, and then boom, she's moved up and suddenly been taking a bunch of. And this is a very impressive win.
Right. Yeah. I didn't actually see this race. I was trying to get home to get some stuff done at home before having to drive back up for the next stage. But, Michelle Howe from Northwest Try and Bike took the win. Again, just looking at some photos from that race itself, it looks like it just came down to a field sprint that she took. Like you said, I think she's from Bremerton, Washington.
Something like that. Seattle area.
Yeah, Northwest. So great win for her to beat Chloe Dygert, who took second place from Show Air. So that's a big win in a straight-up sprint.
Right. Very impressive. Because that's not we doing that ourselves. That's not an easy sprint to take. It's wide open. There's those little corners, so you've got to be placed well. But even then, you can. It's a little bit of a drag uphill, and it's a little over 250. So it
felt longer.
right. Maybe
because it's uphill into the wind, and there's just so many things working against you if you go early.
Right.
As John learned.
Yeah. No, as John learned, and dang it, we're working on our sprint here. I mean, the guy is great. And I'm working on my lead out because it's been a few years since I've been really tasked to do that. So we're still trying to get it right and make sure that he doesn't come off a wheel too soon,
right?
But that I'm in position to help him. So we're still working on it.
Yeah, no, it's good results. So back to the women's race. Michelle Howe with the win, Chloe Daggert second, and then you have Maggie Coles-Lister from Pickle Juice Pro Cycling taking third place. So good results there. I mean, it was a strong field. So
right,
yeah,
pretty impressive. All right, so next day, the podcast wise, you go home. I'm staying overnight there with John Novikov. We do a little update. I did some interviews after the race. Pretty insightful. Take a look back at episode 102. We talked to Tyler Pierce, the vegan cyclist, Garrett Hankins, who won that day, Robert Lander of the A-Main cycling team. He was kind of their guy for that weekend. We talked to Jeff Scott as well for Data Driven, who had done well. And then John and I talked on there too. So check that out. There's some good info. Tyler Pierce and I were then planning on having almost a Jerry Springer style sit down Saturday night because he had some issues online with I want to say it's Jason. What's the guy's name that he had a video with?
Who?
The guy that he had that video with. He was in the breakaway. It'll come to you.
John Baker?
No, Tyler Pierce.
Right.
He
was in the breakaway.
He just had one about the worst breakaway ever.
Oh, Jason Hammond.
Okay, Jason Hammond, and then Michael. That he wanted to sit down with those guys and kind of hash some things out. And I had a really good off the record conversation with him about some of his videos, which is really interesting because he's kind of taken a few shots lately. And I've seen this around and kind of what's the protocol for doing that, and if you think it's okay with those guys offline, because there's a lot of power that's being wielded by someone like Tyler Pierce, who has a lot of followers. So
right.
He said he got a lot of shit in his comment section for his own video. But anyway, we're going to still sit down at some point, but I was going to try to settle that and have a whole little Jerry Springer, like I said, reveal the father, have him some melee. Novikov was going to be our bodyguard. But
he's got a growing list of people that be in that position, though. You got to toe that line in the racing scene, right?
Right, you do, because even our own. I made some comments about officiating and some riders. I didn't say anybody by name, partly because these guys are my friends,
right?
And more of it was, I don't know what I was saying for anyway, but no offense to anybody that out there, because we all do our shit. But these are guys that are friends and that we race with, and I prefer to just try to spread info. But Tyler's got a different platform. It's him, where ours is trying to be about you guys, the cyclists, and what else. So anyway, I thought I would have some good questions for him. That didn't work out. Partly, it's totally my fault, and we're going to talk about that coming up. Paskenta Road Race the next day, 90 miles. Set for us. 88. 2 laps of that turd farm out there. And
it was scenic, though. I mean,
it was a gorgeous day.
Very green, very sunny.
It was, and it was not hot, but it wasn't cold.
No,
but it was windy.
It was.
I've seen the wind worse, but
right.
My ride title was potholes are greater than wind, which is greater than gravel. That's the way it was this year. So why don't you start us off on kind of what we did on the race and how it broke out on for us, the 35-45s.
So in the comboed fields, I don't think you or I are really in a position to talk about how it ended because none of us were there.
We were there.
We were there for like half of it.
Right.
So it heads out toward the valley from the foothills in kind of a narrow little valley, and there was a really strong left to right head crosswind, and
it's kind of about 18 miles straight out.
Yeah,
and then you take a right for maybe 2 miles,
and then you loop back toward the gravel.
Then you come back again with some ups and downs.
Some rollers, nothing really too extreme, but we were probably rolling along for the first few miles pretty casually. There was a decent kick here and there, but it wasn't until I think it was Jason Graffrath, Jay Newton, and I didn't see who the R4R rider was. Those guys kind of took it upon themselves to get a little gap on the field and just start hammering. And then that ultimately just led to some extreme guttering from guys trying to chase and either connect that gap back up to the breakaway or bridge across themselves. And I want to say
who started that guttering? Any idea?
I think John, not Baker, our John, said he was just up there cruising along and didn't realize that he was just absolutely shelling people. I mean, it was
for no reason, because we didn't have a 35 person up the field,
correct,
so up the road. So
it was all 45s, but it was to the point where if you weren't in the top 5 of that field, I mean, you were in the gutter, kind of towing that line between getting whatever shelter you could and potentially riding off the road. I mean, it was pretty intense. We lost a few guys there to just basically getting gapped off. We lost a couple guys due to flats. I think ultimately peace was kind of reestablished once it was pretty clear that Jonathan Baker was going to get across either with everybody or without.
So some point there. He starts to Novikov, our guy, is just hammering up there, and then Baker's trying to go, and people can't go with him. He's just hovering off the front of the group, and we're all kind of chasing and doing this. And then Phil Teixeira, Cortex, is trying to go. Talk to him afterwards, and he's like, I kept going, and Chris Baker kept pulling me back, and he goes, finally I talked to Chris, and I'm like, hey, why don't you just let me up the road with Jonathan? I'm going to help him.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, sounds good, go. So Phil jumps across, he makes it, and then you start having little groups make it their way across.
Right.
And by the time we turn right, there's maybe 8, 10 up the road in multiple groups in 2+ minutes.
Many. It was a couple. It was like, I want to say like 6 or 7. Because it wasn't until later that other guys jumped across.
Right. Which, Sean Haight, I want to say Haight or something like that with the Schnur team. He was, and Scott Giles, who was in the yellow, was just kind of nowhere. He was sitting in the back, not really concerned, or he had resided himself to what was happening. Then there was the yellow and ours, Sophocles.
Right.
He was just kind of hanging out.
He was. It was kind of odd. He and his teammate, or he actually had his teammate on the front of the group a lot.
Right.
Which, you've only got one teammate. It's a stage race.
No 35s up the road.
There's no threat to chase back. It seems like he could have leveraged. I mean, ultimately it worked out fine for him because he's so incredibly strong. But just from a tactical perspective, it just seemed like you're wasting your one teammate by having him sit on the front there covering 45s.
Right. So they have 2-3 minutes up the road.
Yes.
Some groups are forming. We go past the feed zone, kind of up the hill,
right.
The old feed zone on the backside, the reservoir area. And all of a sudden, Chris Phipps is trying like hell to get out. Finally gets out up the road.
Yeah.
Nick Theobald says, I'm going with him. They go. Those guys, miraculously, I think they said in the gravel or right before the gravel.
Just before.
Bridged.
Yeah.
Super impressive, because at that point I'm like, those good for you. You're going to be, top 8. But there's so much time left too. So they bridge up there.
Yeah.
So before we hit the gravel, a guy busts a spoke out in front of me, and I'm like, oh, he goes back.
Yes.
And then a little bit later, Rick Lawton, for R4R, he blows out a wheel, and I'm like, oh, that sucks for you. And then I hit a pothole, really big one, in my front wheel right before we get to the minefield, and nothing's happening. I look over at John, I'm like, maybe we're okay. And then it just went. And I waited.
One wheel?
Yeah, front. And so with that, based on the fact that the car was waiting had helped both of those, Rick caught up to me later. He's like, he was waiting for 4 or 5 minutes. I was 6+ minutes.
You walked like halfway through the gravel,
I did.
Right?
I walked. I was like, I guess I'm going to have to go walk home. So I'm just walking down the minefield. Finally, they come, and they're just, chilling. They're drinking Mai Tais. Really no big deal. I get the wheel out. And I know at that point you're like, whatever. So that's my day. Rick and I joins up with me, and we do the whole lap back to the gravel again together. Well, he catches me after about 5 miles down the road past Piscenta, and most of the day just the two of us. I was looking for threes behind us to join me, never did.
Right.
So that was my day done.
The threes, the breakaway got past you, though, right?
The breakaway passed us before out there.
Yeah.
And then the field didn't pass us until right at the gravel. So.
Okay. Now, when you were walking through the minefield, I've only ridden a bike through it. How does it look on foot? Is it as disastrous looking, or is it?
So, yeah, and I had a lot of time to really scope out. Like I said, the potholes, the minefield wasn't good, but on the right-hand side, you could almost do like a little bit of dirt.
Right.
And it was much better.
Yeah. But
the potholes were like shitty. They're real bad. The gravel was nothing this year. I felt,
Gravel's
now, granted, I wasn't in the group, but that was maybe a better perspective even, because sometimes when you're in a group and you're just flying along, you're just flowing through stuff. But I remember the first few years going out there, it's kind of heavy gravel, and it was a dirt road that was just like when we went to Boonville, it was like that coming down.
As long as you weren't in that like center channel. If you were in either of the tire ruts, it was fine. But Yeah, I found the minefield area, so it's like a mile leading into the gravel. I found the right shoulder to be the best place. You were eating more wind, but you had a smoother line. You can kind of pick where you were going, and I found that to be the best route. Ultimately, that right shoulder fades, and you do have to jump back into the minefield for the last quarter mile or so. But yeah, we'd lost you. We lost a handful of other guys just to kind of the pace that was being set through there. Guys were kind of bobbing and weaving, but still, we were motoring really hard. And then there's that first kicker into the gravel where it's you kind of figure out what you're doing. You're going in there with a pretty big head of steam, and you've got to maneuver your way through the loose gravel. And we lost a couple guys there. I ultimately suffered a mechanical about 3/4 of the way through the gravel, and that ultimately ended my ride.
What was your mechanical? Because I know some other people. Claudio had a derailleur issue.
Yeah, so it was funny. Just a side story. I was reading the flyer for Copperopolis, which is in a couple weeks, and one of the lines is there is like, check all your bolts, including your seat post and your bottle cage and all that. And I actually never thought it would be an issue, but I had my bottle cage rattle loose and flop over into my crankset to the point where I couldn't pedal because the bottle was lodged in between the frame and the crankset, so I couldn't actually rotate the cranks around. I was able to reach down, throw the bottle out, and then the cage was loose, and that got sucked into my derailleur.
You need like tearaway cages.
I think so. Yeah, that'd be nice. But that got into my derailleur. It snapped the battery off, so I couldn't shift, and the derailleur was in the cage. I was able to rip that out, but then the cage was offset, and I didn't really have any tools to fix it on the fly, so I couldn't pedal, and I was able to kind of get it back in line to the point where I could pedal, but only in the small ring. That was that.
All right, so we'll talk about our problems and then some of the kind of the rulings that I see with this in a little bit, but let's finish off the races.
Yeah.
The results, how those went from what we saw. So, and talking to people.
Right.
So Nick and Phipps end up bridging up.
Yes.
And then I guess they're coming through the gravel. It's like a free for all with Baker and Baker. I guess Sophocles. You were there still, and you saw him. He drift off with and chase that group because he was in your group or the main field.
He was with us, and about halfway through the gravel, he rolled off with not his teammate, but there was another guy from Oregon. I forget his name. But they started to roll off together on one of the rollers, and shortly after that, I had mechanical, and you could kind of see yellow jersey rolling away, and the guy he was with, he was in the red jersey.
Yeah.
He'd come back to the group. So, yeah, Sophocles then, from what I was told, some folks thought he had flatted and was behind the group, but it was pretty clear that he had rolled away. He ended up bridging across to the chase, or I guess not the chase group, to the breakaway from the 45s, and just kind of proceed to just hammer off the front there.
It almost seems like they said he got to them as they're coming out of the gravel. I don't know if that
would be impressive.
There was something like that. I remember Nick, I was talking to him, or Phil, or some of these guys, and they were just saying that way. So crazy, but dude is strong, and then I guess he just goes and tries to mess up with the field the rest of the lap.
Right.
And who ends up winning out of that? I think Jonathan Baker ends up winning.
Yes.
And then Sophocles wins on the 35s, right. And then you have Nick or Chris Phipps and Nick.
Other way around. Nick and Chris. I think
in the 45s.
Looking at the times, Jonathan must have just put a couple of tacks into the gravel to get separation. Right. He won by, let's say, like 30 seconds over Nick, and then maybe another 20 seconds back to Chris. So there must have been a little bit of separation there, either in the gravel or the little hill after the gravel.
Gotcha. So and then in the Eric Nelson, I think, wins a field sprint for the group for second.
I think he ended up third in that.
I want to say okay.
Yeah, because Josh Nelson got second. He's the other guy from Oregon.
Right.
Eric was third, and then like you said, Claudio, he had a mechanical in the gravel,
so he rolled back
on the second lap where he actually had to take his derailleur apart to get it out of the chain. So he ended up fourth place, unfortunately, for him.
Yeah, the tough break there. So, and then in the other fields, you have the women, Chloe Dygert, looks like she won that, but with a smattering of her teammates. So it looked like they destroyed people through the gravel.
Yeah, I was by the start finish when they were coming through for their first lap, and Chloe was with her teammate Jennifer, and they had a good 35, 45 second lead as a 1-2 over the field. So they must have just gone full gas through the gravel and got a little separation and held it. They ended up finishing the race 1-2.
Yeah.
The yellow jersey, Michelle Howe, looked like she had a little bit of trouble because she'd come out of the gravel a couple minutes down on the main field by herself out of the gravel. So if you're in that situation, you're kind of out of luck.
Right, and we don't know if that's a factor of like mechanicals, because that could obviously be the case.
Right.
Or if it's just, I mean, there's a difference of just upgrading and doing a 2 pro field where Chloe Dygert's a legit pro.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in the TT. As compared to, trying to do 90 miles of that, as compared to like a 3 or something like that.
Right.
So
definitely.
that's just really tough.
Yeah.
Good for her. I thought Melanie Wong was up there as well.
I think she got 4th.
Yeah, so she did well. Then we had in the 3s, they passed us. The 2 guys are like blazing off the front there. Like they passed Rick and I before we hit the 18-mile corner, and they were going hard. And Rick and I were trading poles every minute, going pretty hard ourselves. And like I said, it took a long time. The moto kept coming back and forth, and they were like 5-6 minutes or so behind.
Was it just like 2 guys in the 3s?
2 guys, but I think one guy flatted or mechanicaled out of the break. I don't know. There was some other thing there. So,
bummer.
And then the field comes through, and our guy Jeff Scott ends up winning the field sprint for 4th, I want to say.
He got 6th because there were a couple guys that had gotten away. He got 6th.
Okay.
But he won the field sprint for whatever was left there.
The 2s, any indication there? I know I talked to Tyler Pierce about that, and Isaiah won, I think, the field sprint. But there were a bunch. Tyler said he just felt really good and was riding well, but I think there were some guys that got off in the.
Yeah, so Isaiah was 5th in that. So there are 4 guys off the front: Richie Voss from SunPower, Drew Levitt, former local now out of Colorado.
Right.
He's with Groove Subaru Cycling, and then 3rd was Eric Fisher. He's just listed as Specialized, so
okay,
maybe that's his bike.
Right. Some Masters 55s. I think Joe Foster was the star of the weekend there. What else we have? The P12. So that one, especially impressive. We'll talk about that right now, with Tyler Williams,
right,
Alexei Vermeulen,
right,
both former World Tour riders.
Yes.
Then you have the Mike's Bikes team, that was riding pretty well. You have the Semper Poro team, who has Corey Lockwood, but he's not representing this year. He's down doing Sam Demas. He just won Redlands. But either way, they were still out in force and impressive. And
yeah, definitely.
And the TT, it really comes down to the TT. So all those guys, I think Tyler Williams and Vermeulen went 1-2. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they had a pretty strong break. I think they were in the move with one of the Semper Poro riders, Innocenti, and then Stephen Vogel from Mike's Bikes.
Yeah, that's right.
And they had a pretty sizable gap on the rest of the field, so I don't know where they got away. But looking at the numbers here, they put in a minute 15 over Joey Bacala from Semper Poro, who himself had 5 minutes over the rest of the field. So
that's impressive.
So that's an impressive effort. And so you've got Tyler Williams 1st, Alexei Vermeulen 2nd, Innocenti 3rd, and Vogel 4th. So those are 4 really strong guys that it's not surprising they would break away from the field and stay away.
So let's talk real quick about Pesquenta and what can be done. So, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of riders. There's in the 2s. I know Cameron Hawk. Well, he and I don't know if this is what his issue was, but he had a mechanical. Our teammate Stefan blew out both of his wheels. This happens. Yeah. I'm out there waiting for a car. I'm wondering if this is ever going to happen. This is the first 30 miles. You get a derailleur. Claudio gets an issue. Some people were allowed to continue on the weekend. You were not allowed to. Some people didn't finish the whole course and were allowed to do that. That's odd to me. But I think that race is so unique, and it's tough to manage support. So something's got to be done, and I wish they would have it in place, because they told you went and talked to him, and maybe you shouldn't have.
Sounds like that was my mistake.
Yeah, you're like, hey, my bike's basically broken. I'd love to finish. You even said, can I finish it on my time trial bike? They're like, yeah, and then no.
Right.
But there were other people that didn't finish even as much as you did that were allowed to do the time trial.
Right.
Place in the criterium.
Right.
And you were not allowed to. And I'm not saying, hey, Chris didn't get to. But they need something in place ahead of time. So, like, here's what we're going to do. Like the circuit race. You get dropped, we're going to pull you, but you're going to get prorated.
Right.
And I want to say that's not the way you do a road race because the whole thing is getting done.
Right.
I mean, I would love to have only done one lap because I was hammered.
Right.
But it's also a weekend of amateur racing, and let's have everybody finish the next few days if you can. That would be my solution with a time way back. Or maybe you don't take – we're not even handing out stage prizes, so it doesn't matter.
It's tough because you want to do what's right, but at the same time you've got to kind of protect the integrity of the field. So I think if you've got a legitimate mechanical and you demonstrate that you have a legitimate mechanical, then you accept the fact that you're effectively out of the stage race. We're going to tack on 1-2 hours time to your road race time, and them's the breaks.
Right.
Because it just wouldn't be fair to be like, oh, we'll give you the same time as the last guy or the same time as the group you're in. So you, as officials, you're stuck because you're trying to, honor the integrity of a stage race. And in stage racing, if you don't finish a stage, tough luck, go home. But at the same time, there's substantially less on the line for a Cat 2 or a 35 plus race. So you kind of want everybody to have a good time. So it's tough trying to balance that. And I understand that. And I appreciate that, they did the best that they were able to. Like you said, I think there needs to be some clear expectations or kind of rules in place for that. But ultimately, it sounds like maybe there were issues with a half dozen people across 400 racers. So it's not a huge issue.
And I just want to help those people understand so they could go forward. So it's much more simple. Put it in the race Bible.
Right.
And it is a weird aspect because, okay, so let's say you've got a good guy. He's not going to compete overall, but maybe he can time trial, or maybe he's really good at the crit.
Right.
So he doesn't even finish, and then he's so much fresher, he's able to crack out a good TT or jumps in the break.
Right.
So what do you do? And if you're going to let him race, you got to let him actually race, not just say, oh, you're only allowed to sit on the back. So I don't know what you do.
Yeah, it's tough because we've rolled out of Pesquenta. It's not clean roads by any means. We heard of a couple guys in the twos this year that double flatted in the neutral rollout. And going into those crosswinds, if the field decides to hit it, you're effectively chasing for 90 miles.
I know.
And it's like, that sucks.
It trust me. I did 60.
So
really
it's a bummer. It's kind of one of the nuances of the course to have. With the mile plus surface leading into the gravel, you're going to have issues.
Right.
So anyway,
Pesquenta done and dusted. It's real Donnybrook as Dave told. He said that we're to 1 to 100 times too many. We're watching the Redlands feed.
And I only caught like 5 minutes of that feed too.
Right. It's driving me crazy. I was trying to remember what that was, and I just remembered. So there you go, Donnybrook. That's what we're gonna say. Okay, so TT, we'll go over that. It's 10-mile horseshoe that we had heard it was on, it was off, of flooding, blah blah blah. I kind of took it somewhat easy. When I say somewhat easy, it means I went pretty hard for me, and a bad result. But that's what you do when you don't time trial or do that much.
Yeah.
But I had the crit to think about. So. That was won by Michael Claudio for the 35s. I think Eris Socrates. Sophocles was second. Right. And third was
Nelson.
Eric Nelson. Yeah. Right. So he ends up second overall. John, our guy, was fourth. The 45s, I think, right? What? Fifth?
John was sixth.
Sixth. Okay. I forget. I was thinking at this point we're only down to 4 people. Right. Because he was 6th overall. The 45s was good because it was a lot of those guys battling.
Right.
And
it's still a race for those guys.
Right. And Dan Bryant, we didn't talk about him, but Pete's kind of took a gamble of they let Jay go up the road. Then Nick's going up the road, and I'm hearing them this is in the road race, and I'm hearing Dan Bryant and Nick and them talk, should we chase? Because Dan's their guy.
Right.
They could have won it overall, I think, if he had been anywhere close to that lead.
Right.
But he only beats Jonathan Baker by 12 seconds in the time trial.
Right.
So that was really impressive. John Baker's just flying right now.
Yes.
And so Dan Bryant, Jonathan Baker, and I forget who was third.
Chris
Phipps. Okay.
Yeah.
So
he was only a second off Jonathan Baker, so that's a really good top 3 there.
Right. And star-studded gentleman did really good in the times. What was the most? Then you look at smattering throughout the day. Some 2s and 3s, just lay it down in that time trial.
Right.
Probably most impressive, Chloe Dygert putting up a time that would have been like within the realm of these. Was it the 1-2? One of them, she was like she would have beat the Masters, or
she would have beat all the Masters. She would have been, I think, top 10. In the Pro 1 race.
Right.
So impressive.
Horribly impressive. Oppressive. Very impressive. So
very good
as you
effort.
can imagine, she set herself up to win that overall.
Especially if taking the fact that she was in the break basically all day the day before.
Right.
So it's not like she was coming into it well rested by any means.
And I was, like I said, I was so tired. I didn't talk to anybody. I really wanted to talk to her because I want to talk to her about, we were at Tour California last year when she hit her head.
Right.
And just see how things going. She married Logan Owen, and he's out there with EF doing living by Flanders, I think. Actually,
is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just kind of seeing how her life is, and pretty interesting. And then she comes out and smashes it. So anyway, so the P12, how'd that one go for everybody?
So same 4 that were in the breakaway in the road race went top 4 in the TT. Inokenti won with a smashing time, 19:14. Very fast. Vogel second. He was 18 seconds back. Alexi was third, 28 seconds back, and then fourth was Tyler Williams. He was 37 seconds back.
How do those times compare to last year with Corey Lockwood?
All 4 of these would have been faster than last year.
Oh, well, impressive.
So either a fast day or fast guys. Take your pick.
I found it was a fast day as well because it wasn't as windy on sections, so it was more mellow all the way around. So that's
very
what
fast.
Yeah.
So I think, realistically, coming out of the TT, the GC was set more or less for all the fields.
Right.
Because, aside from 3 years ago when Rally took it to their current rider, gosh, what's the junior's name who rides for them? TT Superstar.
Yeah.
So
not Carpenter.
No.
Okay.
Anyway.
See the one that did well in the Tour of California?
Yes. Okay. He had the GC lead going into the crit, but Rally just kind of took it to him and put a minute or something on him in the crit to win the GC and take it away from him. So aside from an effort like that, the GC set. It's probably going to be a field sprint.
Right. So let's talk about the crit.
Yeah.
Sort of like the 35s, the 3-4s, they had the morning crit. Mark Tucker had been slaughtering everybody. They have the time trial afterwards. He's in the yellow. He gets in a break with our guy, Ryan Chepernick, which is perfect for Ryan. Ryan's strong. Mark Tucker is hella strong. He just got upgraded to a 2 by everyone, so he's going to be up in our field. And he destroyed everyone at Bariani. So those guys hang off. Ryan ends up getting all the preems and gets the win. I think there was a deal struck there.
Right.
And Mark ends up, solidifying more of his time, and I think he destroyed everybody in the time trial anyway.
Yeah.
That wasn't really necessary.
No, they put 50 seconds on the field, which was darn impressive.
Right. So, that race, the 3s, our guy, I don't know if you saw who won that, but Jeff Scott didn't do super good. I think he was like 6th or so.
Yeah, he's
pulled
been
the
having
pedal.
some issues with his
get
cleats.
some new pedals. If someone wants to donate those to him, that'd be great.
Right. Brandon McNulty is
Brandon
the name
McNulty.
I was thinking
Gotcha.
of.
Yes. Good job. Thanks for the ombudsman update there. Then we went and did the race. The 2s before us?
No, 2s are after.
Okay. So it was us. We did it at 1:30 or so.
Yeah.
And I put a video out there, the last 2 laps, and some other people have some good videos there too. I'll just give a breakdown for what I'm leading out. John, that's our thing. The 35 field wasn't too strong. As we said, it was a smaller one. It wasn't too strong for the sprinters, so I knew we could do well. But our goal was to win the field sprint outright. And Sophocles goes off about 11 laps in, and which actually I thought was a good thing. He was a little sketchy on some of his cornering, and it's like a 6+ corner, right? 6 corner crit? Yeah. So he was a little safer out there. We were chasing him down, and Dan Bryan actually went to the front and did a lot of work bringing him back. And then John and I go to set it up, and they're just like I said about the Thunderhill. We needed a big team you weren't allowed to be out there. They shut you out of the crit. So we needed a team to just drive the pace and spread it out because when you get at the front, you can stay there.
Right.
So John and I were surging a bit. I skip a pedal big time on the back corner. Still tried to get him up there, and our guys to watch were Baker and Baker, and they did a fantastic job taking the front. Lead out for Chris Baker, Jonathan Baker was, and then Cortex, Phil Tessero gets on his wheel, and his teammate another Phil, and it's what's great about the video is I can rewatch it and go, oh, that's what happened, because you have concepts in your mind of what was going on, and his teammate gets on his wheel, and with like 2 or 3 corners to go, just sits up. And, I talked to him afterwards, and that's pretty much what he was doing. And it was brilliant because the guys behind him, they weren't aware enough to hold the wheel or go around him to see it's a teammate doing this. So then I'm doing it like 4 or 5 back, and we jump through. We win 1-2 for our 35s, but we were 4 or 5 overall. So.
Yeah. So Baker and Baker went 1-2, and then Tercero third.
Right. So good for them. Yeah. I mean, the Bakers were both impressive all weekend.
Chris rode incredibly well.
They don't need a lot of teammates for when they were riding both of them were riding like that.
Apparently not. No.
And Jonathan Baker, the most impressive hair out there for the weekend, maybe.
And mustache.
Well, that's true, and mustache. So then the Pro 1 race comes about. You want to talk about what we saw in there real quick?
Before that, though, the twos, they actually had a strong break of 4 riders.
That's right.
They ended up putting 54 seconds on the field, so it was a good effort on their part. But that was Keelan Ontiveros. I don't know who he is, from Velobody. He got the win. Madden Titus from SunPower third, and Neil Leonard from Dolce Vita third.
Yeah, some of the SunPower guys were doing good this weekend.
Yeah. So Pro 1 race. What did you see there?
Well, it was pretty much all together. There's some little moves here and there. Pete's wants us to come into a sprint Pete's. Mike's.
Yeah.
There's Mike's. There's Pete's. There's Bill's. Or Bob's. They wanted to come down to a sprint, so they had Chat. Basically, they're looking for him. They're lining it out last 2 laps, and they come around the last corner, and it's not Matt Chat. It's Justin Polson, Semper Poro, and he holds him off to the line. And so he goes 1, and then Chat 2.
Yeah.
And there's a cool video Justin put out showing him perfect timing right before that last corner. He just dives around.
Right.
And takes it. And my thinking on that one for a sprinter is you set that up the corner before the last corner. You come out of the second to last corner and you have your lead sprinter sprinting to the next corner so that you don't get those dives.
Right.
And I think that's what happened last year with Justin Williams. And he's like, I closed my eyes and dove in the corner.
Right.
But then again, they're doing better than me. So
yeah. And then Freddie third, local guy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was Chico. Women, Chloe Diger, I think she wins the crit. She wins everything but the Thunder Heel, so she's on fire. And I think some of them are going to Joe Martin's stage race now. So
okay.
So any lasting memories then for Chico?
Fewer for me than for you.
You had a good time with us, though.
It was enjoyable to watch from the sidelines.
Mine is probably we're in the hotel right on this start finish line area.
Yes,
John and I, and so for the time trial. He gets out the trainer, 8 o'clock in the morning. He's riding the trainer in the hotel room, and it's one of these older ones where you can
hear everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So
3rd floor.
I was just like, hey, why don't we just go warm up on the course, which we did. So,
right.
But that was my memory.
Yeah. No, that was it was a fun stage race. It was fun seeing Jeff and Stefan do their camping approach to it.
Right.
Sleeping in parking lots and whatnot.
Right.
I was more comfortable in the hotel room myself, but it was fun to watch them.
Yeah. So good racing out there by everybody, and they put on another great race.
Yes.
Amazing weather.
Weather was great. We hit a little window of sunshine, and now we're back to the rain and clouds.
Yeah, it was pretty warm up there. The crit itself, I had a little wheel issue. I had to pull into the pit. I start the race off. I start cranking it out, and someone bangs my back wheel, and it dislodges a bit, and I'm rubbing on my brake. I'm opening the brake. Then I'm like, okay, I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then I'm going and I start to sprint, and it's moving in there, and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. So I pull out, get a wheel, get back in. No big deal.
Obviously
drop the chain. Then
worked well.
took another lap. No, I didn't do that. Okay. So some corrections. We made some comments about Santa Cruz. So I got an email from Robert Liebold. He is the director there. He's been there for quite some time. And he just wanted to give me some info. So we said about the 50th, 51st. I wasn't even right on the numbers. Here's what he said. You were unsure about the 51st annual status of the Santa Cruz Classic. Well, actually, I wasn't. I said it was the 50th, so I was unsure about even the number. So I was even worse off. I thought you'd let you know that the race started in 1968. So this year could be the 52nd. But we had that 1 year, he said, the 89 earthquake with no race. So 2019 is the 51st. I did not become involved until 71, when was a promoter first time in 72, while Velo Promo did not start till 78. There could be a possible number of annual numbers. To add to the confusion, the first race was considered a selection training race for the U.S. Olympic team, 1968. Thanks. Now, just so you know there, he said it didn't happen 1 year because of the 89 earthquake. He didn't say it didn't happen in 1989.
Okay.
But you think it probably didn't happen in 1990.
That would make the most sense.
The earthquake was late in the year.
Right. Yeah. And there was a good article I found in the Santa Cruz Sentinel that covers a little bit of the history and provides some early insights to that 68 training race and how 6 of the guys in the 68 version went on to go to the Olympics in Mexico City. So it's a pretty storied race.
Right. Any other? Do you remember any? You said there was a big crowds there. And
yeah, they said there were thousands of people watching and 500 plus racers. So I guess Le Mans done the race as well. Right. A few of the original U.S. Postal guys have done the race. Lance did not. So it looks like it's been a very well raced race.
Right. So Jeff Linder put out a video of that crit showing his sprint and the great move of Skinner off the front.
Right.
Perfect timing on that one. It was a pretty good video to see there as well. Let's do some. There's got a lot of just people of note. If you're tuning in here and you're looking for the Between Two Wheels podcast motorcycle YouTube channel.
By now, they may have figured out they're on the wrong one.
Subscribe to the wrong one if you're confused about this Chico Stage Race. This is not your typical Harley channel.
There is a lot of motorcycle riding out on the Paskenta gravel, so that they might still have interest.
Right, because we got a smattering of them signing up. I didn't care.
And we were at the Thunder Hill Raceway. I'm sure there's motorcycle racing that goes on.
Sign up. That's fine. Watch us. It's a good thing. Someone had to put in here. I forget his Hunting Synth as his name on YouTube. What's cycling?
Chris Hallius.
Yeah, that's right. What cycling YouTube channels do you guys watch? Are you fans of the Cole Collective? Do you think NCNCA or USAC could do a better job to market cycling by pushing more online content? What other YouTube channels do I watch? I just watch ours exclusively.
Wow. Okay. I watch GCN. I enjoy that.
I check theirs.
That might really be it.
That's not true. I watched a smattering of things. Zimney, people's race videos.
I'll watch Linder's videos.
Yeah, the Vegan Cyclist. Haven't watched that guy in retirement lately because Phil Guyman kind of bored the hell out of me, and I've got a problem with him. Do I think USAC or NCNCA could do a better job marketing cycling and pushing online content? Possibly. I mean, NCNCA said they had a podcast.
Okay,
I'll just leave that there. I think they had another episode come out I saw, and I didn't look at it. So maybe I should at least check that out.
It's an annual show.
Right. So I don't know. I'm sure they get, what's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to push stuff because I love this sport and I love talking about it. And so I like to highlight people that are doing great in there. So
cool.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they could do better. It just seems like they could be more working in sync with each other. It looks like a lot of promoters are kind of forced to lead the charge themselves instead of having some kind of core group that they can reach out to for any type of promotion.
Right. So other YouTube comments, I think Curt had added this one. He, not your Rolling Stone 687 penis pills get you. That might have been a spam.
I hope so.
Yeah. So what's coming up for the NCNCA calendar? We've got Turlock, Lodi this weekend, UC Santa Cruz Road Race. I don't know if that's collegiate or that's the
collegiate only.
Okay, collegiate only. Sea Otter Classic. Copperopolis. I heard they had fixed some potholes out there.
Yeah, that's the word on the street. Paved and fixed, whether that means they're really paved and fixed or just maybe filled in with more asphalt. I don't know.
Where they just dump some hot stuff in there and it's actually worse because then your bike's getting smattered up. Copperopolis, the 22nd of this month, the NCNCA board meeting. I don't know if anybody's interested in that. They do post their minutes online. I don't know if you're able to tune in. I don't know if that's a thing.
I think you can ask to participate remotely and get some type of access. Otherwise, you can participate in person at the Sports Basement in Pleasanton.
Right. So it might be interesting if they're going to be more red kite discussion. I don't know if they're going to. Wards Ferry, Regalado Road Race, and then you have Golden State coming up in May, and you have the Masters Crits. I think Juniors is combined with that in Folsom, the 25th of May. Boom.
That's ways out. Yeah, so Turlock this Saturday, Lodi this Sunday. Lodi is a fantastic course. Weather looks like it should be relatively nice. No rain, a little bit of sun peeking through the clouds. Turlock looks like attendance is a little light, but there's obviously an opportunity to do day of registration. Online's full, or not full, online's closed. So good races. If anybody's jonesing for that, it's still there. So,
how about things that make you go,
The only thing I've got is just I feel like that bombed out stretch of road that leads into the gravel at Piscenta has gotten worse. And at some point, it's not like it's just rough road. I mean, it is insanely bad. Is that a liability? Is it like a selection-making stretch of road, or is there anything that can be done about it, or is it just kind of that's what the road is and that's what we deal with? It just seems like you're adding an increased amount of luck for riders to get through there. Jeff Dale from Thirsty Bear has a video through the bombed out section, and he's doing the best that he can to follow wheels. At one point, he's on my wheel, and I bunny hop a pothole late because I didn't see it, and then he rides right into it. And it's just like it's an easy place where, as you learn, to kind of lose an opportunity to be in the race.
Well, and it's funny. I was on Jeff Dale's wheel before the bombed out section.
Yeah,
that he jumps the pothole, and I hit it, and it's not his fault. I mean, that's just what happens in that minefield section. And you're right. I mean, at some point, do you have to change the course because it's so bad? I doubt that that's a priority for that county to be up there and fixing.
Bike racing makes so much money for them, I'm sure.
Right. But at some point, it's the gravel's really, when you go there and it's like everyone spreads because you can't be on someone's wheel because that pothole is going to come right away.
Right.
I don't know.
Center line.
Yes, and center line. That's
right.
Well, mine was going to be officiating at Chico, and what we just talked about. I actually really appreciated the officials this weekend, but having something in place for this Piscenta and to make that decision, so it's for them. It alleviates their decision making at the time and having to do this when you could just say, here's what the status. Here's what we're going to do with the road race and all these others. And we already talked about that.
Yeah, and I would just say, sometimes officials get a bad rap, but they were incredibly patient. They took the time to listen to the issue, and they could have just told me to go kick rocks. But, they took the time to listen to the issues that people had and tried to develop a plan that worked for everybody. So that doesn't always work to everybody's benefit, but they did the best they could.
Right. And
it's great.
I'm not, like I even said before, I'm not begging on officials, just kind of on.
Not today.
No. And even the official, I forget her name, at the start of the Masters, she's like, oh, you guys are the worst, the Masters, because I think most of us were making jokes.
Yeah.
But even so, when we're making jokes, we're kind of giving her a hard time. So.
Yeah, she was the head official I talked to. Right. She was really helpful.
How about any winners or losers?
Well, we've got a list here. You took everybody from the Chico Stage Race.
You could take whoever you want. I've got a list as long as my sleeve.
Yes, you do. I'll go with Michelle Howe for. I'm going to have a few here, including one that we didn't get an opportunity to talk about. Michelle Howe for winning that circuit race. That's a big, impressive win. Unknown 35-plus racer who's winning the bar for 35-plus right now, John Novikov,
right?
For winning the 35-plus crit with your assistance. And then we didn't really talk about the Dwars der Vanderlyn, but Matthew Vanderpool had a heck of a race. Some cyclocross guy, I guess.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, good. I could do Jonathan Baker and Arius Sophocles. Those guys are impressive. Baker the Sophocles guy was just kind of a robot impressive.
Yeah.
And Baker is tactician and smart, and then just robot impressive. So I really give it to him, especially the way he led out Chris Baker the last day, just knowing what he had to do.
Right.
Just love it. I mean, I like the way he races. I hate the fact that he destroys us, but that's kind of, he's one of my winners. And Justin Poulsen, I really love that sprint. I mean, I'm big friends of Matt Chatton, a big fan of his. I always like to see him do well. But when you see that kid pop through, I didn't see what happened before there, but Mike's is leading it out, and he jumps through the corner and does it A1,
right,
and holds him off at the line. Does a little bike throw. I really like that. And he's been impressive the last few years. So, Chloe Dygert, I got to give it to her too. I mean, coming out there, taking on everything but the, she's my loser for not getting the circuit, the circuit race. No, but pretty good for her there. Any losers?
Yeah, my bottle cage for ruining my weekend, but yeah, it's kind of on me for not checking my bottle cage bolts. Got to do that.
Right.
So, lesson learned.
I got a few here. Anyone that didn't show up for Chico that could have, that's one. Our coverage at Chico Stage Race. I was so tired. And then I'm gonna pick on a friend of ours here, Eric Nelson. And this because at the start he's giving me crap about air pressure in my tires, and we're kind of letting it out, and he's trying to play mind games, and then he's the first one that I see flat. I only give this to him because he ended up chasing back and getting back on the grid, but he's the first one that flats, and I'm like, oh, talk about me, my tire pressure.
Right.
Well, then I did flat later on when he stayed in the group, so just playing with him. But he had a real good. He should probably be a winner too because he ended up second overall. He had really impressive weekend up to the race and had a good time trial.
Second place is not a winner. Sorry.
It could be.
No.
Do you want to? Is that good for you today, or do you want to talk about World Tour, or should we just let that go?
The only thing I'll talk about World Tour is Flanders is this weekend, and it looks like it's shaping up to be a heck of a race. A lot of good opportunity to have strong racers do well. Van der Poel, Van Aert, the whole Wolf Pack, your favorite team, is in there. Sepp Van Mark, Peter Sagan, Christoph had a really good Ghent race, so there's a lot of people coming in on good form, and
346 power was what he averaged for that race.
That was normalized, yeah, which is that's okay.
That's hella good.
Yeah. So it's this weekend, Sunday, I believe. Heck of a race. I'm going to check it out. It's one of the few races I wake up early to watch live, so I'm looking forward to it.
So this is an announcement about podcast here. So I'm going to be talking I plan to next week have a conversation with bringing in Mike Sayers, and we're going to go over the classics that have, and then pre up for Paris-Roubaix, since he's done some of these. I don't think he's done Roubaix, but
okay.
I know he's done some of his other ones, so cool. I thought we'd get some insight on that. So keep that in mind, and that means I'm actually going to have to do it.
It sounds like you're held to it.
He had a herniated disc, so I'll be interested to hear how all that went down.
Bummer. Okay.
But anyway, any lasting memories? Oh, my new bike's all up and ready to go.
I've seen some pictures of it.
Setting new power numbers like crazy because that power meter actually works. It's a little odd. So,
I think we covered lasting memories. Chico's a fun race.
Chico's good. It's tiring. I'm ready to get back on the bike. I haven't really done much. So, Curt, we missed you. We'll try to get him in on the podcast again. Thanks to everybody that listened. We got some good comments. You got people coming up to you. We got people coming up to me talking about the podcast this weekend. So just doing it for you guys, because it's not. My wife's not too thrilled about the fact that we're doing it for us. All right. Thanks again. Once again, Between Two Wheels podcast has been episode 103. As always, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you can find this podcast. Share it. Make a little comment in there. We'll try to get to some of the readers' comments like we've done before. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and our Facebook page for more videos coming up. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.